Narc Magnet. You are a magnet to our kind. You attract us, the narcissists. You have done so at least once before, and probably many times before, and you will always continue to do so. We are drawn to you again and again. There is no hope for anything else. As an empath, contagion empath, super empath, or codependent, of those majority outcomes, or whether you're a hybrid, you radiate with the traits which draw us to you. Hitherto, you had no awareness that this was the case. You would enter a room and be oblivious to the heads that turned your way, as our kind detected your presence. You would, of course, notice that you were receiving the attention of people, but back then you had no knowledge of who was engaging with you, and especially why that was the case. You have various traits which appeal to us. These are the empathic traits, the class traits, and the special traits. It is your empathic traits which stand out most of all to us. Your trait of being a love devotee, or honesty, caring, being a healer, being a truth seeker, and more besides. They are evident in the way that you behave, the words that you use, the gestures that you use, and the expressions that form on your face. They are part of who you are. The way that you interact with people, the way that you look about a room, the way that you walk, the way that you sit, the place that you decide to sit, and so many other things signal and indicate to us your empathic nature. In the same way that everything that we do is marked with the taint of our narcissism, although of course you fail to see this, everything that you do becomes stamped with the essence of your empathic traits, of course save when emotional empathy has been eroded. When you walk into the hunting ground of our kind, you are identified promptly as exhibiting potential. It's as if you give off some kind of fuel signature, like some kind of scent, which our kind smells and recognizes as soon as you come near. You once didn't see the lesser narcissist as he leant against the bar and noticed you as soon as you entered the premises. His eyes fixed on you as he observed your entrance. The mid-range type A narcissist would look up from where he was sat and find that he was drawn to you. The unmistakable essence that flows from you has been picked up on and identified. Both lesser narcissists and mid-range narcissists don't know the real reason why they wanted to engage with you. They feel a compulsion to do so. They would put it down to there just being something about you, feeling a connection, the fact that you're beautiful, handsome, that you looked interesting, that you had a kind face. Those are the reasons that the narcissism feeds to the unaware narcissist, to compel them to act, to cause them to do something, to seek to engage with you. But it is because the narcissism has recognized what you are, and thus controls the narcissist to start some form of interaction with you. The need arises in the same way that a lion knows that it's hungry, and therefore it must find some prey. In effect, the lesser and mid-ranger's antennae twitch as you, the empath, walk through the bar. They are alerted to your presence, and then they will watch and instinctively pick up on the other indicators, which tell them what you are. The greater narcissist and the ultra see you, and we know what you are. We recognize that you are an empath, and we see it in the way that you move, the things that you do, the gestures, etc., as I've described, and we know what we're seeing, and we know what it signals. We are conscious of that. There is that slow grin to ourselves, indicative of the thoughts which are running through our minds as we begin to assess your suitability. You, unconsciously, are signalling to us what you are, that you're an empath, and that there is fuel to be obtained, an individual who can be controlled, somebody with the right character traits and the residual benefits, that the prime aims will be satisfied, and there is an opportunity that has presented itself. Once upon a time, you were oblivious. You walked through this den of narcissistic intent, unaware of the parasitic creatures that waited to climb down from their waiting perches so that they could engage with you, coil about you, and draw you into their web with their silver tongs and charm. You just thought, for the most part, that they were being pleasant, polite, and taking an interest. Of course, the less evolved of our kind did sometimes appear lecherous, overly keen, and getting in your face, but many would not. Either way, you had no idea how much danger you were in, as you allowed your empathic traits to shine like a beacon. Each and every day, you radiated these traits, issuing a subconscious, "come and get me," to our kind. It felt good to receive this attention. How pleasant it was to be courted in this manner, and of course, your own addiction to our kind was now being fed, and the emotional thinking began to rise, obscuring any red flags which presented themselves, preventing you from seeing what was occurring, so that you would continue to allow the addiction to be fed. As our kind picked up on your empathic scent and were drawn to you, we sought additional confirmations, assessing your class traits, and the expectation of those special traits too, through a combination of instinct and design, dependent on which school of narcissists you had engaged with. And if you want to understand about the various empathic, class, and special traits, do see my book, Sitting Target, where I go into considerable detail about those things. You do this as easily as you inhale and exhale. Your traits are imprinted on you. They're indelible. They're part of who you are. They're part of your core, and you can't remove them. You cannot flick a switch and turn off these empathic traits. They are you. Imagine, you will, if some kind of glasses had been created which allowed a physical representation of your empathic traits as, say, hues of red light. If one donned these glasses and looked into this hunting ground as above, a bar perhaps, then one would see several things. First, there'd be the normals, who would have a slight red glow about them, indicating some empathic traits, but limited in number and extent. There would be the dark and empty spaces, where our kind lurk. There are no empathic traits to be found there whatsoever. Next would see the dancing trails of scarlet, and blood red, and rose, that signify the empath, the roaring flames of riotous red which blaze and indicate the presence of the super-empath. And then the bright red of the signature of the codependent. As your gaze swept the room, one would see these differing hues and varying intensities, all indicative of the ever-present empathic traits that you have, whether super empath, contagion empath, standard empath, or codependent, or a hybrid. The red is there to be seen. It's impossible for you to become incognito. You're unable to remove your empathic traits. You can't switch them off and pass undetected. Accordingly, you'll always stand out to our kind. You will always be identifiable. You will be seen, and therefore, if our kind is in the vicinity, whether physically proximate or through the accessibility of technology, we are drawn to you. Like sharks which scent blood, like the hungry dog which smells meat, we pick you out and converge on you in anticipation of the assertion of control, the fuel, the character traits, and the residual benefits. You will always be a magnet for our kind. You have been created with empathic traits, and you will always keep them. You will remain that beacon which we see and that we flock to. You will always attract us. Of course, you may learn to dampen down the manifestation of your empathic traits by altering some of your behaviours. Certain actions, words and gestures might be reduced, lessened and altered to reduce the extent of the empathic traits which you exhibit. but those traits will always shine through, and you cannot maintain this cloaking for long. It's contrary to who you are and how you conduct yourself. Your empathic traits are so extensive that even when you have suffered the beasting at our hands and mouths, that when you've been drained, numbed, and exhausted, those empathic traits will remain. They cannot be extinguished. The empath will not shine with them as brightly, and following the full horror of the sustained devaluation and disengagement, the empath will not function with such an obvious display of empathic traits, because the brutality of the treatment will cause some diminution for some people in function and display. The super empath will continue to display these empathic traits because this person has the capacity to endure and invariably removes themselves at an earlier juncture to escape what has occurred. The super empath recognizes earlier that they've had enough, and they will seek their escape, and their empathic traits continue to shine brightly. The codependent, no matter how browbeaten, how ground into the dirt he or she is, will continue to exhibit those empathic traits because the codependent would rather give the narcissist his or her last breath than take it for themselves. They continue to give, even when there seems there is nothing more that can be taken, and thus their empathic traits remain on display. The contagion's visceral response remains exhibited. They can't get rid of it. That deep-seated feeling and reaction that occurs remains. And no matter what the treatment they receive, although it may be diminished, they still continue to feel and exhibit their empathic traits. This is why it is so often the case that you are almost passed from one of our kind to another. You are disengaged from, but your empathic traits remain evident, and thus another of our kind flocks to you, ready to gorge on the fuel which is generated by your responses, especially where you are of the geezer cadre. Even if you escape, you continue to signal your suitability to us. You are unable to do anything other than stand out in this way. It is only when you have gained the insight and understanding into knowing who it is that you keep attracting and why that you finally learn to watch what to look out for. You can't change what you are. Indeed, why should you change who you are? What you can alter is your ability to identify us when we make that beeline for you. As you will always continue to radiate your empathic traits, we also exhibit the various traits of us being a narcissist, which once understood and once recognized in the behavior of the everyday, and the reduction of your emotional thinking means that you finally see and take notice of the red flags, the flashing lights, and the blaring klaxons which herald the danger of our approach. You will always be destined to be a magnet for us. That will never change. We will flock to you. We will be attracted to you and seek you out, our instincts seeking that scent of the empath, which tells us that our needs will be met, that the prime aims will be provided. You will draw our interest and attention because the empathic traits flow from you. You will, once you gain the knowledge and understanding, know who it is who has joined you at the bar, and as a consequence of having reduced your emotional thinking beforehand through the application of my work, that you will realize who it is who is flashing that winning smile at you, and you can evade, and instead, you are then able to seize the power. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.